Good afternoon and welcome to our next local infrastructure hub session. My name is Michelle Jolin and I am the CEO and co-founder of the organization Results for America. Our session today is co-hosted by the United States Conference of Mayors and is supported very generously by our funders, Bloomberg Philanthropies, Ballmer Group, Emerson Collective, Ford Foundation, and the Kresge Foundation. First off, I'm so pleased to be able to introduce my friend Jim Anderson, the head of government innovation at Bloomberg Philanthropies. And as most of you know, Jim is the force behind all of the highest impact initiatives that help mayors deliver for their residents. So welcome, Jim, and thank you for all your support for this local infrastructure hub.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle, and good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be here with you. Really appreciate the awesome work that Results for America does. They are helping governments at every level focus on what works and embrace a culture of using evidence. I can't think of more important work at this time, so thank you guys for your partnership. Also really want to thank our awesome partners at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. You guys are doing such a great job getting word out and pulling mayors in for these sessions each and every sort of opportunity, and we're really grateful for that. It reminds me of sort of why we stood up the local infrastructure hub in the first place. Shortly after Congress passed and the president signed the bipartisan infrastructure law, we got some outreach from White House officials talking about some of the concerns around all of the information that would be going out to communities, the really complicated work that communities would need to do to string outcomes like equity and sustainability through grant applications and to be competitive for their communities, and that there was a real need for a heroic effort to galvanize world-class technical assistance and knowledge sharing to make sure that every community got what it needed to participate in this historic funding opportunity. And that was before the Inflation Reduction Act. So the opportunity is even that much bigger and more profound now. So we launched the hub. We've been conducting these sessions. We also have a very robust technical assistance program I want to make sure everyone knows about. More than 300 communities under 150,000 in size are signed up for very great technical assistance through the National League of Cities. Be sure to check out our website, localinfrastructure.org. More opportunities for more technical assistance will be coming out soon, and we want to make sure everybody gets it. And with that, I'm thrilled to say we're joined by some remarkable mayors that we've worked with very closely over the last couple of years. Mayor Gallego from Phoenix, Arizona, Mayor Sacha Rhodes Conway from Madison, Wisconsin. I think we're also being joined by Mayor Mannheimer from Asheville. Welcome to all of you. These mayors understand the importance of utilizing this unprecedented federal funding while creating a focused, ambitious outcome orientation and doing it in lockstep and partnership with their communities. Now I'm delighted to introduce our special guest today, EPA Administrator Michael Regan, who will talk more about the funding available to make the promise of green infrastructure a reality in your cities. He's our 16th administrator of the EPA. Prior to that, he was the Secretary of North Carolina's Department of Environmental Quality, where, among many accomplishments, he established an incredible track record in protecting communities from coal ash contamination. Additionally, the EPA's recently announced environmental justice grants programs are an incredible example of how this administration continues to prioritize communities that have been disproportionately harmed by polluted water and air, a commitment that we very much share here at the Bloomberg Foundation. The local infrastructure hub is mightily focused on helping cities advance Justice 40. So thanks, Administrator, for your leadership on these issues. We're really happy that you're here with us today. And as Mike Bloomberg always says, the Zoom is now yours, sir.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, James. I really appreciate it. And, thank you, everyone. It's an honor to join you all virtually. I appreciate the opportunity to share a few words. It's remarkable. It's been 2 full years since the start of the Biden-Harris administration. And from the very beginning, we've been laser focused on addressing some of our nation's most pressing challenges, including combating climate change and advancing racial equity. And in many ways, this EPA is the tip of the spear when it comes to tackling the administration's highest priorities. When I first stepped into this role, I immediately instructed my team to push as far and as fast as possible to deliver on the promises of President Biden's agenda, while continuing to fight every day for everyday people in this country and for the planet. The good news is, since those early days, EPA has grown tremendously, not only in numbers, but also in resources. Unprecedented funding from both the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act have enabled us to move further and faster than we ever thought possible. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is a once-in-a-generation investment that will ultimately lead to the creation of millions of jobs. It's modernizing our nation's crumbling infrastructure, and it will put us squarely on the path to winning industries and the economy of the 21st century. You know, we're investing more than $60 billion, billion with a B, of bipartisan infrastructure law funding in the health, equity, and resilience of communities all across this country. And the scale and scope of the Inflation Reduction Act is truly remarkable. You know, this law is confronting the climate crisis head on, and it's advancing environmental justice, all while keeping money in the pockets of hardworking American families. Frankly, both of these historic pieces of legislation are game changers. The Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA for short, will reduce environmental harm, foster healthier communities, and uplift those who have for far too long been shut out of government funding, with more than $40 billion coming to our agency to support new and existing programs. So you've heard me correctly. Folks, that's $100 billion of resources coming to EPA, resources that have already begun to make their way into big cities, small towns, and everything in between. And we're responsible for ensuring that these funds reach those who need them the most. As a state secretary for environmental quality in North Carolina, I saw firsthand how actions from the EPA can either help or hurt local efforts. And the truth is, local leaders like each of you know your communities better than the federal government ever could. You are the eyes and ears on the ground. So we absolutely need to hear from you, and we absolutely need to work alongside of you. The local level is where the rubber meets the road. And I fundamentally believe that our successes in confronting the greatest environmental challenges of our time will be determined by the strength of our partnership and our ability to work together to develop solutions that optimize impact. In the months since both IRA and BIL, we've hit the ground running in delivering real relief to people all across this country. And we've done that because we partnered with local leadership. From investing $1 billion in decarbonizing our yellow school bus fleet that carries our most precious cargo to and from school every day, to supporting long-term resilience and equipping communities with tools and resources to withstand the impacts of a rapidly changing climate. We have been and we will continue to work in lockstep with you because the American people need federal, state, local, and tribal leaders all to be on the same team, working towards the same goal. Later this spring, EPA will award $250 million for climate pollution reduction grants. The funding will go directly to states, tribes, and municipalities to develop emission reduction plans that specifically account for how best to integrate resources from both BIL and IRA. Additionally, we will award $3 billion in new climate and environmental justice funds to community-based organizations. This funding will support projects from start to finish, from needs assessments to project planning to implementation, that very technical assistance that has been talked about so often. And every one of EPA's programs invests in technical assistance, an essential piece of the puzzle that will equip communities with the tools they need to access federal funding that has historically been out of reach for far too many people. So I'm incredibly proud of the work that we've done so far, and especially excited for what's to come. While we've taken some unbelievable leaps forward, folks, we're just beginning. We're just getting started, and we're not letting our foot off the accelerator. Right now, we're sitting at the forefront of a historic opportunity to change course and to rewrite the story, to show people that their government, federal, state, local, and tribal, works for them, to chart a path forward that looks a little bit different and a little bit brighter for our children and the generations that will follow. That's what I came here to do at EPA, and I know that's what you all came to do in your jobs. So let's continue to get the work. And I'm excited to be here today and I'm excited about our partnership. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Administrator Regan. We really appreciate your acknowledging that local governments, cities especially, are the place that we're going to be delivering these big results on these climate ambitions. And as you said, we're just getting started. So wanted to open the Zoom for questions. Please put your question for the administrator in the chat, and we'll call on you to unmute yourself and ask your question. And so our first question is going to be from Mayor Frank County from Des Moines, Iowa. Mayor County serves as the Global Executive Committee President for the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. Welcome, Mayor.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Administrator Regan. Thank you so much for your leadership on climate and the infrastructure issues. As you know, not only that ICLEI organization, but the U.S. Conference of Mayors played such a key role in keeping the climate issue alive when, should I say, previous administrations kind of failed to give it priority. Yes. President Biden's leadership has given us the most significant climate bill in our history. Can you comment on how you are working with your counterparts in various agencies to encourage adoption of numerous programs and incentives in the IRA? And I'm thinking specifically about the tax credits and rebates available at the Treasury. It seems to me we need a national educational campaign to help businesses and households know what is available to them to reduce their carbon footprint. Does the EPA have a role in this? And how is the federal government organizing itself for an all-out push to use these credits and programs?
Well, Frank, thank you for that question. It's a great question. And, I'll try to answer it in the following ways. First of all, we're excited about the President's State of the Union address. And, after that address, all of the cabinet agencies are going to hit the road trying to tell the story and explain to the American people exactly those questions that you just posed. Luckily for us, with Pete Buttigieg and Marsha Fudge and Marty Walsh, we have a number of mayors in this cabinet that we sit around the table and we talk about what it takes to actually reach the American people. So we're calling on their mayoral experience, and EPA and Treasury and Labor and DOT. We're all sitting down at the table looking at, first and foremost, how we leverage all of our resources and our programs. And then we're charging our communications staff to help us with the narrative that demonstrates that collective movement. We're also, we have a rural partnership network that I've worked with Secretary Vilsack on, where EPA and USDA, we will have staff in each region that can serve as a hub that answers questions for all of our agencies. So we're trying to create one-stop shopping. So in addition to all the cabinet secretaries discussing the narrative, we're also trying to create resources on the ground so that we can create one-stop shopping. Let me just say, the work by the mayors and the work by our stakeholders to get these resources for the Inflation Reduction Act, nothing short of a miracle and exceptional work. When I think about Treasury and we look at those tax breaks are going to be critical, first and foremost, because we want individuals and businesses to have access to those tax breaks. But what that really means is when we think about the carbon reduction strategies, the regulations that EPA puts forward, frequently for stationary sources, cars and trucks, those tax credits are going to allow for our regulations to be more competitive as we look at more advanced technologies. So we have a strong partnership all across our agencies in terms of mayoral experience, helping us with the narrative, and leveraging our resources to be sure that these resources hit the ground and get us as far as we'd like to go. And I'd also like to say we're all committed to Justice 40 and beyond. So it's not just about deploying the resources, it's about ensuring that those who need these resources the most are first in line.
That's excellent. Thank you. Looking forward to that post State of the Union roadshow. Looks like we have a question from Courtney. Do you want to come off of mute and ask your question, Courtney? says that she unfortunately can't. So I will give you the question, Administrator. Her question was, how will EPA, HUD, and others work with contractors and builders to help make sure we have the capabilities to install heat pumps and other electric HVAC systems?
You know, that's an excellent question. And for EPA and both HUD, you know, we're laser focused. Secretary Fudge and I just talked about this a few weeks ago. We're laser focused in ensuring that our infrastructure for deploying the resources are matched up. You know, most of the resources that come from EPA, from BIL, go through our state partnerships. And so I've written a letter to every governor across the country, sort of outlining as we push these resources to our states so that the states can distribute it to the municipalities, that we have some strict criteria that we'd like to see them adhere to. Secretary Fudge is doing the same thing through her apparatus, and our state agencies are meeting on the ground to be sure that as these resources come from these governors, that we have on the ground filtration systems that help leverage our dollars. So we've tried to not be too prescriptive, but we've been prescriptive at my level to the governors. And then we have people on the ground that are executing on that level of prescription that we provided. The big news is that many of our stakeholders, we're inviting them in and we're hosting webinars, and we're also going out into our states and our regions, and we're hosting roundtables where we can in a safe environment. So we're doing as much as possible, but if there are ideas for what we could do differently or better, we're all ears because, you know, luckily for us, we have multiple bites at this apple because we have significant resources to invest. And if we don't get it right on the first round, we can continue to refine to be sure that we meet the intentions of Congress and the president.
Thank you. We had a pre-submitted question that was about how cities can take full advantage of the IRA. Any thoughts you have on how cities can sort of maximize the IRA's impact?
You know, I'll go back to a statement that Frank made earlier, which is, you know, there was a time where the federal government wasn't performing and mayors were out there leading on these efforts, being champions. Many mayors have ready-made infrastructures to be recipients of these funds. So what I'd like to say is that if our municipalities and our nonprofits and our community organizations, you know, if you don't have the infrastructure in place, or for those that have the infrastructure in place, there are technical guidance and technical resources available so that we can put the proper infrastructure in place. That's sort of round one. Most of the funding that's coming from BIL and IRA and the first tranches are technical assistance. So I'd love to advise the mayors that have infrastructure, help other mayors, you know, with the intellectual capital, because there are resources to help build it. And then as we see these second and tertiary rounds of funds coming out, billions of dollars, we'll have mayors all across the country situated to deploy these resources. We know that in all of our states, we don't necessarily have leadership, governors who are strong advocates of these BIL dollars and these IRA dollars. But I can assure you, the president has every mayor, every community, every citizen in mind as recipients of these dollars. And we have to be sure as the federal government that we're putting these dollars in the hands of mayors, county commissioners, locally elected officials who are ready to hit the ground running despite political stripes and deploy these resources.
I see lots of applause for that one. So implementation by local leaders is the most critical element for sure. So thank you, Administrator Regan. I know we are at time, and so we are going to let you go free, but thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today and talking to the mayors, and look forward to continuing to work closely with you and your agency.
Well, thank you for having me. And listen, thank you all for all the great work. We could not get the president's vision accomplished without your partnership. So I'm very grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we are going to be turning to a subject that is near and dear to my heart in particular, which is talking about what's working in cities today. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what's working in cities that have used multiple sources of funding to successfully complete green infrastructure projects. We are joined by an all-star panel of mayors, Mayor Rhodes Conway of Madison, who recently became the chair of Climate Mayors, Mayor Mannheimer of Asheville, North Carolina, another member of Climate Mayors, and Mayor Gallego of Phoenix, Arizona, who is the vice chair of Climate Mayors and C40. We are looking forward to this panel and know these experts are going to have the content that'll be useful for all of us. So first of all, we know that so many of the cities have already developed aggressive and comprehensive climate plans. And we know that both the infrastructure law and the IRA contain significant climate action provisions. So I'm hoping that each of you can talk to us about how, what sort of the recent developments in the implementation of your climate action plans and how you see these funds, the infrastructure funds and the IRA's climate provisions, helping you meet the goals your city has set. So Mayor Rhodes Conway, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, first, let me thank you all for putting this together, and hi to everyone on the Zoom. Good to see you all. I think as I was reflecting on the topic today, it strikes me that a lot of what we do at the city level is really about sort of bringing different funds together to make our projects go. So in some ways, that's a normal course of business for us. What's exciting about the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act is, first of all, the scale, and second of all, the specific focus on climate, which allows us to really think about how we are putting climate into everything we do. And, I think early on, we were talking about the difference between shovel ready and climate worthy. And so normally, in the past, when federal funds came down like this, it was just, what projects do you have on the shelf, right? And let's take them off and get them going. And now I think, particularly because of the nature of this funding, we all need to look at what makes our projects climate worthy, and how are we going to really impact either the resilience of our communities or reduce our greenhouse gas footprint. So in Madison, we have a goal to reach 100% renewable energy, net zero carbon for city operations by 2030. We're about 3/4 of the way there, and community-wide by 2050. I think these two laws, or the multiple sources of funding that come with them, are really going to be transformative in our ability to meet those goals. And whether that's in transportation or buildings, or in energy, I think all of this work will complement each other, and that's really important. It's another sort of way of layering, right? So the work we're doing at the city, but then also the work that the community is doing and the access to the tax credits, all moves us forward. I just want to give you one specific example, and that is our transit system. So the city of Madison is a little bit unique in that we run our own transit system, and we have been working recently and just broke ground on a bus rapid transit system. And so here's an example. We are supported by the Federal Transit Administration in the capital aspects of this project. We're supported by BIL funding to buy all electric vehicles for this project, which is really exciting. But we're also the bus barn that these vehicles will go in, we're putting solar on it through our local Madison program. And so, and there's more rooftop, so you can bet that we will come back and look at the new credits that are available for solar, and likely look at in the future at the bus and bus facilities grants, the low and no emission vehicle grants, so that we can electrify the rest of our fleet. So we really are trying to line up all of these things to fund what needs to happen in terms of transforming our transit system to be fully electric, fully sustainable.
I love the Madison the solar panels. Mayor Mannheimer, can you tell us about Asheville and your climate goals and how you are seeing the infrastructure law and the IRA opportunity to help you meet your goals?
I'm glad to. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. First of all, thank you all for inviting me to be a part of this. And Asheville's a lot smaller than Madison and Phoenix, so I'm honored to be among the big cities here. We do share in our the climate goals that were mentioned about Madison, our goal of moving to 100% renewable energy for city and our county operations by 2030. So in partnership with our county, we do a lot of work together with them, and our community at large by 2042. And so right now, we're actually in the process of revamping what was our 2009 Sustainability Management Plan into our new Municipal Climate Action Plan. And I think the way to think about that is, in the past, it was about climate mitigation and our carbon reduction, reducing our carbon footprint. And now, in addition to that work, we're really talking a lot about climate adaptation and climate resilience. And I think for all of these cities, we share in the need to continue to improve our aging infrastructure, the enormous amount of funds and revenue that need to go into repairing and maintenance, but now thinking about, we don't want to just replace what was there with exactly what was there. We need to be thinking about resilience. And we had a pretty bad experience here this winter. We had, for Asheville, a long period of 0-degree weather where we saw one of our water intake facilities freeze over and a water outage experience for a prolonged period of time in our city. And, we realized that this facility, since it had come online, had not experienced that kind of a weather event. And we really understand that this is the time to be investing in our infrastructure that thinks about the new normal when it comes to extreme weather events. And are we resilient in the face of that? So for us, this is an incredible opportunity to leverage additional funds to be able to make those improvements throughout our community and meet our goals as a community. So we're really excited about it.
Thank you. And Mayor Gallego, Phoenix has had big, ambitious climate goals. And how are you using the infrastructure law and climate provisions, IRA climate provisions, to help achieve those?
Absolutely. And Michelle, thank you for convening this important conversation. Thanks to support from Bloomberg Philanthropies, we just updated our climate action plan. We see a lot of important tools to help us achieve it. We are a growing city, and so we have to grow in a more sustainable and green way. Both laws have resources for our entire plan, but we're particularly bullish on IRA helping us with our buildings and with the Infrastructure and Jobs Act helping us modernize our transportation systems to be greener and more sustainable. So maybe since Mayor Rhodes Conway got us off talking about transportation, I will continue on that vein. One of the good pieces of advice I got from Secretary Buttigieg, who gave it to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, was to think about what you most want to accomplish and then work with us try to fit it within the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. So what does your city need most? And then let's be creative about how we can get it done with the many pools of funding that are available to us right now, which is every mayor's dream, right? We all run for office trying to think about the big picture things we want to accomplish. And now to have a partnership with philanthropy, the administration and private sector that says we're going to take that, whatever's number one on your list and try to move it forward. So for climate action in Phoenix, we are more than 500 square miles. We have a very robust and large transportation system. We have to get that right. We also try to think about what our core areas of excellence are in the greater Phoenix area. We are often known as the Electric Valley because we have such a concentration of electric vehicle industries. So for us, that was a place that made sense to start. We are also a growing hub of vehicles in the hydrogen space, and we wanted to support those industries as well because we have to have very significant reductions in transportation emissions if we are going to hit our net zero goal. Mayor Rhodes Conway and I are both very active in climate mayors, as you've heard, and we're proud to be one of, I think, more than 100 cities in the US that committed to net zero. But, I hope to still be around in 2050 and 2040 and all of those milestones. And I know people will hold us accountable for that. So we're looking at where are the big gains we can make. City leading in procurement is one for us and really pushing our fleet. Phoenix operates the largest bus fleet in the state of Arizona. And so we've tried to move towards greener fuels for decades, but this I think is a moment where we can take a generational leap. So that was our first big push with the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, was to both get the infrastructure to change the way we fuel our buses and then start turning over the fleet. I'm not quite with Mayor Rhodes Conway where we're gonna be able to do the project 100% right away, but we're making tens of millions of dollars in commitments to turn over thanks to the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and that will be very important to us. We're also just setting up the infrastructure right now that will allow us to succeed in the future and beyond Infrastructure and Jobs Act. We try to work with our state electric vehicle plan. So as you all know, all the governors have submitted a state plan, and it's, in our case, the charging infrastructure isn't as much in Phoenix as I would love, but we have a good chunk on 2 key arterial freeways. And so we're working with our power company partners and others to make sure that we coordinate what we are doing with Infrastructure and Jobs Act with what the state is doing. Another piece of advice for mayors: if you have not met with your state infrastructure coordinator, would put that high on your to-do list. Some states have a separate one for Inflation Reduction Act, also, in my opinion, worthy of your time if you want to do it with a few cities that have similar challenges that can maybe even magnify the attention you get. But I think it's in our best interest as local electeds and stakeholders at cities to tell our partners at the state what our top priorities are, and hopefully they are receptive. So the more you can be an advocate for your community, in my mind, the better. Just a little bit of a Phoenix plug, because in 2 weeks, the greater Phoenix area is going to become Super Bowl central. And we're very proud to be the first Super Bowl with an autonomous vehicle sponsor that is electric, and an electric vehicle sponsor. So Electromechanica is our EV sponsor, and then Waymo, which drives electric autonomous Jaguars, is our AV sponsor. So we hope you'll come to Phoenix and either get on our amazing light rail system or try an electric vehicle for the first time. We think the fact that they'll be driverless and the steering wheel will turn itself, maybe we'll get some people interested who are not interested just because of the important climate transition implications. But we are trying to wrap up some big electric vehicle investments and momentum to try to get ready for that week and make the Super Bowl a greener week for our community and a chance to move forward on our climate change objectives.
That's exciting. It's an exciting opportunity to spotlight this great work too. So congratulations on that. Mayor Rhodes Conway, you said that mayors are used to sort of using lots of different sources of funds to get things done. And that's sort of your special skill, your superpower as mayors, doing that. In this moment where we have this especially large sort of tranche of federal funds coming, and these ambitious climate plans, ambitious climate goals, can you talk more specifically with maybe some examples and particular challenges or strategies you've used to blend funds together and think of the other things that mayors can maybe borrow from about blending these kinds of funds to reach the goals you're setting?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's important, and I guess I would echo what Mayor Gallego said about making sure that you're staying in touch with your state and that you know who is sort of in charge of the funding or at least coordination at the state level, so that you can anticipate the funds that are flowing through the states, how that might be accessible to you. But one of the things that we did pretty early on, and it was actually as a result of advice from the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative, we put together what we call the Funding and Recovery Task Force. And that started out with really focusing on the ARPA dollars, but has shifted a little bit to focus on now the BIL and the IRA dollars. And with the goal of really just making sure that we're aware of what all the sources are and what we're eligible for and what fits for the different kinds of projects that we have. And so I think that that's sort of the first step for any place is, do you know what's out there, right? And are you tracking? And so I appreciate the US conference and the National League of Cities and the work that they've done to try and make sure that we all do know what's coming to us. I think, as I said, cities are used to thinking about, okay, so just for example, we have a bridge project and some of that's going to be local dollars and some of that's going to be our, plant MPO dollars. Some of that's going to be state money. Some of it's going to be federal money because we cannot get the project done without all of those sources of money in. So we're sort of used to looking like that. But I think that the volume right now can be a little bit intimidating for folks. And so I think it's take advantage of, the tools that are out there. But maybe I would say also to the federal family, right, that they need to be doing work to make sure, and I think the administrator mentioned this, that the first sort of round is technical assistance. And so helping us figure out how, like, what's the bridge between the projects that we have and the dollars that are out there. And this is something, so I happen to serve on the EPA's Local Government Advisory Committee, and this is something that we have heard, I think over and over again from particularly small and mid-sized cities, that they don't have a lot of capacity. They don't have dedicated grant writers. They don't have dedicated project managers that can just shift to a new project overnight. And there is a need for technical assistance, and there is a need for help in navigating. So it's really great to hear that, at least on the EPA side, that there's funds coming for technical assistance. And I just know also already that EPA staff, have a lot of resources and can help us navigate. But that would be probably my biggest piece of advice, is for folks to really think about where can you get that knowledge, and how does that fit back into the work that you're trying to do. The other thing I would say is that the DOT, just for example, and I think it's no coincidence that Secretary Pete was a mayor, is trying to streamline their application processes. They combined several NOFAs at DOT. I think that's a great example. I would love to see, and this takes some of us back a little ways, but remember the FAFSA, where you just filled out one application for all the different sources of student aid? Like, we need a FAFSA for cities, right? And like, one great example is there's a bunch of different pots of money for cleaning up our vehicle fleets, whether that's buses or heavy vehicles or even light duty vehicles. Like, why not one application for all those programs, and let us tell you what kind of vehicle we want to clean up or replace, and you tell us what source of money you can give it a grant from. Anyway, I digress a little bit, but I do think that that's one of the major barriers. So for cities that are really wanting to take advantage of BIL and IRA funds, I would think about, who's your staff team? Where can you get grant writing capacity from? And then making sure that you're talking with intergovernmental folks at each of the agencies to see what technical assistance is available for you.
Really good advice. So until we have a FAFSA, Mayor Mannheimer, do you have thoughts on the best ways for other cities and towns to be able to take advantage of multiple federal streams of money?
Well, I really like the comments about, sort of having the capacity as a smaller city to be able to find out about all these opportunities. It's a little like Easter egg hunting sometimes. And you really don't want to ever pass up or miss an excellent opportunity. We are a smaller city, and we do have to leverage a lot of different funding resources to be able to put together large projects. And one of my analogies I use forever is I think of it like, we need meat and potatoes, but sometimes we're only offered cannolis, and then we're like, do we need to eat cannoli? Can we eat cannolis? So I like this process so much better already, in that there's a real effort being made to sort of figure out what can cities take advantage of. I'll give you an example. We're really excited about the carve out for nature-based solutions. And because for us, loss of tree canopy is a big issue in our city. So we've done a tree canopy study. We've been able to document our tree canopy loss. And we have a tree canopy protection ordinance that allows folks to pay a fee in lieu, but due to state limitations, we may or may not be able to use that fee in lieu funding we're collecting to partner with federal funding unless it's done in such a way that that allows us to take advantage of that funding. So that's just an example of I love the FAFSA idea, that we're sort of able to use what our list of needs are and better pair it with the incredible opportunity we're getting through federal funding. I mean, ARPA was probably the most amazing moment of flexibility and funding I've ever seen, and probably will ever see. But it really, I think, helped us think about new ways to work together to put all of these funding sources together, whether it's nonprofit, the private sector, the state, the feds, local government, all of the players together, really looking at the list of needs in our community and figuring out the best way to put that money together. So that's exciting, and we're glad that there's a lot of Q&A around this to try to get it right.
And there's a note in the chat about how ARPA dollars could potentially be spent to hire technical assistance managers in project pre-development. And so it sounds like that's another thing to explore as well. Mayor Gallego, do you want to talk a little bit about how you're managing to blend all the funds?
Absolutely. And I would sort of echo what Jim said in introducing us today. Use the Bloomberg resources. And if you're eligible for the additional assistance, go for it. Climate mayors put together a guide to the Inflation Reduction Act with C40, very focused on climate change. So I printed out and I tabbed the ones that I thought were most useful. Accelerator for America and the administration each put out a guide to the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And I did the same thing to that. And my city lead, when we meet together, he's like, okay, how many more tabs you got for me? Although I'm pushing as much as possible, we just try for everything we are capable of doing. I would also encourage everyone to put your congressional delegation to work. My congressman is my ex-husband, so I feel like if I can do it, you can all do it. But they want to bring money home generally. I mean, you may have some unusual political situations, and they can sometimes get answers from the administration even more quickly than you can, or you can try it at the same time for both. I would advise cities to pick a real focus on a catalytic project or maybe two projects that you think will make a difference for your city long after these funds are expenditure. That was advice I got from Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher, who said that mayors really ought to engage in projects that will catalyze so much more. And whether it's a neighborhood of your city or an industry you're really trying to transition, put your time and effort where it will be the gift that keeps on giving. For me, I have decided to focus a lot on the riverfront for the city of Phoenix. So Phoenix exists because of the Salt River. Our roots are agricultural. Apparently the founders thought about naming the city Pumpkinville because wild pumpkins grew along the river, and I'm very glad they went in a different direction with Phoenix. The city rose from canals dug by Hohokam communities long before our founding, and so we are named after the bird rising from mythical ashes, but in our case, the canals, and that water it's in our DNA of our city. We, like many cities, turned our back on it, and it became more industrial. Because of redlining in our city, it is also an area that developed to be predominantly Latino and African American, a real Justice 40 series of communities for us. And so we have tried to apply for several different funding sources from the administration. We were successful in getting a RAISE grant to do a pedestrian path along the riverfront, which we think will catalyze private sector development, and then a pedestrian bicycle only bridge, because we've been told by many bicyclists, and I've felt it myself, you'd rather not be against speeding traffic unless you're a hugely accomplished cyclist, and people are more likely to use climate-friendly modes of transportation when they feel safe doing so. We have 2 private sector property owners who are very focused and interested in doing solar along the way. So we hope that they can be direct recipient or beneficiaries of the Inflation Reduction Act funding in that area. And then we are going to our voters this November with a general obligation bond that will allow us to buy land along the RAISE grant. And we hope, again, like really catalyze change in an area. Since I'm sort of on a Super Bowl kick right now, we'll say the NFL Green Committee is making investments and doing tree planting along the corridor where we are investing as well. So we've tried to get private sector philanthropy and federal funds all together to hopefully leave behind what will be a legacy project for all of us right now in Phoenix.
Wonderful. So as we start to get toward the end of this session, I want to make sure we talk about community engagement and sort of how are you engaging residents to meet, some of your goals. There's several tax credits in the IRA that are available to consumers and to businesses for energy retrofits and renewable energy. Could you talk a little bit about how you're engaging residents and helping them access these credits, as well as how you're planning to use the energy efficiency conservation block grant funds to support this effort?
Yeah, so I think this is just a really great opportunity for our communities. And again, I see this as another way of sort of blending and braiding, right? Because we're doing work on our buildings and we're encouraging the private sector to do work on their buildings with help from these kinds of credits. I think we have a lot of work to do to educate people about what's available. And I think that's something, we heard the question to the administrator. I think that's something that we're going to need all levels of government to be pushing on. And it's a very active conversation. I will say that I have heard cities are doing really innovative things, including like literally door to door, doing door hangers to let people know about what's available to them. In Madison, one of the things that we've been working on, and perhaps here's another example of blending and braiding, is we got grant funds, private grant funds, to start a project where we are going into naturally occurring affordable housing and doing energy efficiency and water efficiency retrofits. And so those grants are limited, and I have dedicated some ARPA funds to continue the project, and it's been very successful. We'd like to start adding solar on the roofs and sort of growing what we're doing in each building. But I'm hopeful that there will be IRA funds that would be applicable for this kind of project, and that we'll be able to apply to not just continue, but to dramatically expand the project. But also know that in every building we go into, part of the deal is that we're looking at what are the available rebates, both on the federal and the state level. And so having these tax credits available is really going to be able to, it's going to help us extend the work that we're doing and reach more buildings. And so in that case, it's a very hands-on, we recruit the landlords and we work with them. And, we basically say it's our partners and are doing, it's not city staff, but the nonprofit partners we're working with, say like, listen, we will do this work for you. We will get those rebates and tax credits for you to take the money just off the top of the cost. And so I do think that it will range from that very hands-on, high touch, let us help you access these credits, to the broader, let us make you aware of what's available to you, everyone in the community, and hope that you take advantage of it. Another thing that I just mentioned briefly is that we are working on a building energy savings program, because I see there's a question in the chat about commercial buildings. So this targets our largest commercial buildings, which we know are a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. And the city council is considering it right now. But if when it passes, I think these credits will be very important for those building owners to once they identify their energy use and the places where there's opportunities for efficiency, to be able to do the work and take advantage of the credits available to them. So I think that's very important. And we haven't figured out how we're going to use the EECBG funds yet, but it certainly can't but help increase our capacity to do this work.
Mayor Manheim? Mayor Gagel?
Yeah. So I mentioned before that we have our community-wide goal for 100% renewable energy. Our date is 2042. And we have created a community campaign that provides education and resources to residents to pursue energy efficiency, renewable energy in their homes and businesses, called Blue Horizons Project. And it's implemented by a local community-based organization. So we anticipate using that platform to help get out the word. And we're excited about the possibility that these tax credits can be paired with the opportunity in the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund to scale up North Carolina's newly established green bank. And it's called the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund, which will provide an opportunity for low interest loans to folks in our community that want to take advantage of these funds. So they can replace things like old hot water heaters or air conditioning units, things like that. So it's, you know, a great collection of efforts here coming together. And luckily we created Blue Horizons as our community-based platform back when Duke Energy was converting a coal-fired plant here in the southern part of our city to natural gas, and we wanted to work with them to stop an additional peaker plant piece being added to it. So we asked them, you know, if we could take on this community effort to hold our energy needs at bay, could we stave off this, which we did successfully, but we've been able to continue to use this platform. So this will be what we use to get the word out.
Mayor Gallego, residents engaging businesses, residents?
I think we all know what are the areas in the Inflation Reduction Act that make sense for our local economy and climate. For us in Phoenix, solar is a very big one. We have more than 300 days of sun, and then electric vehicles. So my recommendation is to partner with the stakeholders in those industries. In our case, we partnered with utilities, auto suppliers, installers on the electric vehicle side, and we have a consortium that has come together. Part of that is making sure we have the product available, and then part of it is the educational side. While I've been very big on recommending resources, I subscribe to Consumer Reports because they had the best guide of which cars were available and eligible for the different tax credits, and wanted to be able to answer questions from people who were asking, you know, I need a truck. What can I get the tax credit for? So all of those partners work together. We're doing the same with solar and our installers, and really trying to answer the questions small businesses have. I am particularly excited about some of the programs to get renewable energy to schools. I'm a mother of a 6-year-old, and I think the more time I spend on school campuses, the happier I am. So if we can green school campuses, that's a real win for me. Our industry partners, the installers and the industry associations have been very helpful. They are very on top of this, and they do a good job working with us to explain it. Mayor Rhodes Conway mentioned that some cities are doing door hangers even, and I want to do a plug for San Antonio and Mayor Nuremberg on that one, who has an example that he's happy to share with folks about just how to get that information out there. If we can really get our residents to take advantage of this, it will be huge for reducing their energy bills and improving our city's sustainability.
Thank you so much. We have more questions, but we've run out of time. So I just want to thank you, all three of you mayors. Your learning and your experiences have been so incredibly valuable. So thank you for your time. And we are going to now, I want to make sure everybody can see in the chat, there's a link with specific examples of grant programs that cities can apply for in each of these categories. And so take a look at that. Thank you again, mayors, for your participation in all of this. We are going to get a Zoom poll to you right now to make sure that you can provide your feedback and your input on how we have conducted this, and want to make sure we keep improving as well. So thank you for everyone for taking that Zoom poll. And finally, just wanted to wrap it up by making sure that everybody knows about the next 2 sessions that we have for you all. One is on February 8th, and it'll be focused on promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation programs. That's a DOT directed program. We'll also have a session on February 14th, which is focused on clean water and wastewater infrastructure. And then finally, on February 28th, a session focused on IRA guidance for local leaders. And that sounds like it'll be particularly relevant to some of the things we've been talking about today. So as always, more information is included. Links to register can be found on our localinfrastructurehub.org that we've posted in the chat. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us today, and very much look forward to seeing you at our February sessions. Thank you so much.